Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Bases Loaded right here on OTF. I'm Blake Munroe, where I'm joined each and every Friday by CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe. Guys, we got a lot to talk about today, including Texas being on a 4-game win streak, including a very impressive sweep last weekend against then-ranked number 3 Georgia. Of course, they're still top 10, but I think everybody has to be happy with these results.
Yeah, you sweep Georgia, a second top 5 series win this season in SEC play. I know that the Tuesday skid about a week and a half ago, it happens, right? Especially to an in-state team, school that wants to come out and beat you, to bounce back down a few big-time bats. Very impressive. Beyond that, the pitching, Blake, 38 Ks in 3 games. You had a 2.25 ERA in those 3 games. From starters to the guys out of the pen, everything was top-notch. It was a really impressive showing.
Yeah, you're, for what it's worth, you're 4th in the RPI now. You've got 2 massive series wins, one over LSU, the sweep of Georgia. And I think the bigger thing for me, guys, is Schloss has talked about 15 conference wins being that magic number. You're 4 away from that. And you're not, after this Kentucky series, you'll be past the halfway point of SEC play, but you're not even at the halfway point, and you're already 4 away from that magic number 15. So, yeah, couldn't, I think I speak for a lot of Longhorn fans when I say you'd have been happy with a series win, but dude, to get a sweep is remarkable. It's freaking awesome.
Jeff, I didn't want to say it last week going into the series, but my mind was like, you win one, hey, you held serve. You're down really big bats. That's a great lineup that's hitting the ball out of the park as well as anybody in the country. Just win one, right? Hold serve, get to the next week, and to go out and win all 3. What do I know?
By the way, 9 of your top 11 teams in the RPI right now are SEC teams.
Yeah, that's insane. Absolutely insane. And I'd tell you something else that's insane, guys, is, in my opinion anyway, last week we talked about how we thought it may come down to Texas pitching versus Georgia bats. Texas only allowed 8 runs the entire series. Georgia comes into that series averaging 10.5 runs per game. So to hold them to 8, just mind-blowing in my opinion.
The thing that I was most impressed with, and Rylan Galvan credited, he had obviously had the walk-off home run on Sunday, but he credited Max Weiner with calling some really good games for the pitching staff. And Schloss talked about this. Galvan talked about this. I think even the pitchers mentioned it. Georgia's a team that really sits on the fastball. And, you look at Jared Spencer, I think of his 11 strikeouts, I think 8 of them came via the slider. So the ability to command that secondary pitch with the fastball to kind of keep them off balance, that was huge. I've marveled, guys, about the job Max Weiner has done with his pitching staff. There are enough superlatives to say how impressed I was, because again, you look at the product on the mound the last 2 years, or the last couple of years, and it just hasn't been up to par for what we expect a Texas pitching staff to be. Max Weiner, with just a few freshmen and a couple transfers, you've turned this into one of the best pitching staffs, statistically one of the best in the country. So I couldn't be more impressed than where the Texas arms are right now.
Yeah, for sure. And CJ, going back to your point about that 2 top 5s now, Texas, I tweeted this out earlier in the week, but Texas now 6-1 against current top 10 teams. That includes LSU, Georgia, and then, of course, that Ole Miss game we saw at the very beginning of the year. But during that span, guys, in those 6 games, they've outscored their opponents 43-17 in those 6 victories. So it's not just the pitching, the hitting. Looking sharp. That's all I can say.
And you're finding some offense from the back of the lineup, right? That was one of the things I was hoping to see coming into the Georgia series without, a Max Ballou, without an Adrian Rodriguez, with a banged-up Rylan Galvan, who by Sunday we all know ended up being just fine. But look, Jaquay Stewart, big-time bats. I thought Tommy Farmer, especially on Tuesday, you saw him come alive. Some timely hits, a double with the bases loaded. And then Tuesday as well, you got to see a little bit more of Easton Winfield connect with some barrels there. And it's been a really rocky start to his Texas tenure for Easton Winfield, but to see him start to find some barrels consistently, that's really encouraging. And it starts to piece together what could be a really even more dangerous lineup, right? When you look at 1 through 5, you know what you got there. 6 through 9, if they're going to start consistently finding some gaps and finding some ways to get on base, yeah, you're going to have a very solid pitching staff, as you're talking about, in a 1 through 9 lineup that can go toe-to-toe with just about anybody.
Well, before we move on, I need to tell everyone out there about one of our sponsors right here on Bases Loaded, and that's Chinook Seedery. They got the best sunflower seeds around with 8 flavors to choose from. You will find one that you love, I guarantee it. Be sure to check them out online at chinookseedery.com or in your favorite store. Man, they're phenomenal. Go get you a bag, whether you're watching the game in person, on the couch, whatever it may be. Check out Chinook Seedery. And as we do each and every week, guys, let's take a look at the polls for the first time all season. Unanimous across the board. Number 2. Hard to argue.
With Tennessee dropping 2 of 3 to A&M at home, somebody had to move up. And, Arkansas is in the 1 spot, Texas in the 2. Can't CJ, I got nothing else. You can't argue with that right now.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, Arkansas, again, where are they? 11-1, sitting right there with Texas in the SEC. I think they're 31-3 on the season. So, hey, I know some Texas fans, would have liked that number 1 spot. And I can't blame them. You just came off of a big-time sweep over Georgia. But Arkansas is certainly doing their job as well. And that series is going to be super fun when they meet later this year.
And, guys, Texas right now, 27-4. They got the 25th strength of schedule ranking, so the 25th hardest schedule, according to a couple of different metrics and sites. But, looking ahead a little bit, obviously we got to talk about Kentucky here momentarily. But you got number 9 Auburn, you got number 1 Arkansas, CJ, as you just said, and 16 OU, along with a rivalry game with A&M. And then a Florida team that, had very high hopes to begin the season that hasn't worked the way, that Gator fans would hope. But, I mean, to be at 27-4 with the schedule that they've had, first year in the SEC, a brand new head coach, a lot of unknowns. I think this is just a season that all Texas fans can just sit back and enjoy and be thrilled with, no matter what.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's fun going into a game not knowing who the hero of a game might be, right? There's so many options, whether it be on the hill, whether it be, at the plate. It felt like in years past, it was either Texas needed Ivan Melendez to go nuclear or you needed a Clemens to really step up and have a timely hit. This lineup, again, I mentioned Jaquay Stewart against Georgia last week, big-time 2-run home run to get that offense going. We've obviously seen Rylan Galvan and his walk-off home run. Max Ballou, Adrian Rodriguez, Will Gasparino, basically that entire series against Missouri. You've had plenty of guys step up and be the guy for a single game. And when you get into these do-or-die elimination games, that's so important because then it's tougher to pitch around the lineup. It's different to say, we could put on a Will Gasparino because we want to face a Rylan Galvan. Well, you can't do that knowing that Rylan Galvan's pretty deep. And then in the pen, with Max Rubs, Volantis, I thought Cade Bing's kind of coming into his own to allow a Ruger Riojas to really become that Sunday guy. It's been really impressive so far.
Yeah, I think the fact that the pitching roles have gotten sorted out, and again, not the way I think Schloss and Max Weiner envisioned it. I don't think they wanted Ruger Riojas to be the Sunday guy. As a matter of fact, we know they didn't. They wanted to use him like they used Evan Ashenback at A&M last year. But you can't argue with what Riojas has done in that Sunday role. Volantis has been. It's almost like their roles are flipped, right? Like you figured Volantis had a chance to be the Sunday guy. Now he's your lights out guy out of the bullpen. Riojas is your Sunday guy. It's working right now, and health is going to have a lot to do with it. We'll see how some of these arms hold up. Because keep in mind, Jared Spencer wasn't a full-time starter at Indiana State. Riojas doesn't have a ton of starting experience. Volantis is a freshman, so we'll have to see how those arms hold up throughout the course of an SEC schedule. But I love the way the pitching staff is working right now. You're finding enough offense, and I think, guys, I feel like I can say this now. When you talk about an SEC championship race, the fact that you got the sweep over Georgia and you've got the series win over LSU, that's going to give you a little bit of margin for error down the stretch if you happen to maybe drop a game in Lexington, maybe even if you go to Fayetteville and drop 2 or 3 or something like that. You got a little bit of room to play with. But the fact, guys, that this team has done such a good job so far of handling their adversity, whether it's been losing a midweek game or injuries or whatever, they've come out clean on the other side. That should tell everybody the kind of culture they've got right now in that clubhouse.
For sure. And we mentioned Volantis a couple of times last week. I asked y'all who, the pleasant surprise of the season so far has been. And a couple of us answered Volantis. I want to talk about him a little bit more. He was named SEC Freshman of the Week for the second time in the last 3 weeks, guys. Friday, he goes out, got the final 4 outs on 8 pitches. And then Sunday, he retires 12 of 14, 8 strikeouts and 4 innings, only allowed 1 hit. But Volantis has not allowed a single run in SEC play, 2 walks versus 20 strikeouts. I mean, just insane for a freshman to come in and do what he's doing the way he's doing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, a couple MLB scouts probably scratching their head saying, man, why didn't we draft this guy earlier, right? But, for him to be just a freshman doing this, 20-2 K to walk ratio, that's one of the big things that, again, I've been very impressed with, because looking at some of the transfer notes, looking at some of the returning stats from a year ago, that wasn't a strength of this Texas staff. And for Volantis specifically, 10-1 in SEC play going up against LSU's, Georgia's, some of these big time rosters that will compete with just about anybody in the country. He's shutting them up, sent them down. And it's very impressive. That sweeping hook, it's tough to hit.
Do you think about the best freshman pitching performances we've seen at Texas? Corey Knebel, Houston Street, even Youngman as a freshman. What we saw from Aaron Nixon and Tanner Witt in 2021. Volantis is as good as any of those guys. That's saying a lot, because I'm throwing out some big time names, including one in Houston Street that got his number retired up on the wall at Dish Falk. But Volantis has been that good. He's been lights out.
Okay, and before we get to Kentucky, I need to tell everybody about our other sponsor today in Tackle Addict. Are you an avid fisherman who's always searching for the right supplies? Do yourself a favor and check out tackleaddict.com. It's owned and operated by former Longhorn Brian Robinson and former Longhorn baseball great Brandon Belt. Tackle Addict has everything that you need for the best in today's fishing equipment. Tackle Addict is for the everyday fisherman and serious pros alike. Get their product shipped to you directly from the shores of Lake Sam Rayburn. That's Tackle Addict, ADDICT.com. And Brian and Brandon say hook 'em. Well, let's talk Kentucky, fellas. What are we expecting? And Jeff, in fact, we were asked this morning on Coffee and Football, what are we expecting from this series? Of course, first is tonight at 5:30 Central Time. It'll be on SEC Network Plus tonight, and then the next 2 games will be on SEC Network. But what are we expecting, guys? And what would you consider a successful weekend besides obviously another sweep?
To me, it all starts with Jared Spencer tonight getting the start as the Friday guy. And look, I think maybe the saving grace in this deal is, hey, you figure, okay, guy coming from Indiana State, SEC road environments are probably going to be new to him. He's pitched to Kentucky before when he was at Indiana State pitching in the NCAA tournament. So, he's if he can continue to set the tone, and he's getting to the point where you feel like every time he takes the mound, you've got a chance to go win. If he can get you off to that start, then I feel like you're at least going to win the series, and maybe get a chance to sweep. So I think this is another one. Take care of your business. Just get the series win, get it back home, and get ready for you got a midweek trip to Texas State next week, which is it's always weird that home and home they play every year. It's just a weird series. And then you got Auburn next weekend. So take care of business, get back home. Not easy to win a road series in the SEC, but you'd hate to see this momentum come to a halt.
Yeah, win the series, and again, keep the bats hot. That's a big thing for me. Easier said than done, but I'm looking at how these two teams compare. Look, Kentucky's pretty good when it comes to getting guys on base, right? They're north of 400 as a team with their on-base percentage. That's within the top 70 in the country, and I know that doesn't sound great, but that's a top 20 percentile team in all of D1 college baseball. On top of that, Texas has a clear advantage in the long ball, about 1.7 home runs per game. That's top 20 in the country. Right now, Kentucky's about a home run per game, which is, again, pretty far back down the list. So if Texas can keep the big ball, the long ball in play this weekend, and we saw it, Blake, you put up those projected starter numbers. They got a great team ERA. That's going to be something that I think that Texas will have to continue to chip on. Quick starts is going to be key for me playing with the lead, because we've seen it with this Texas team. When they get a lead, very rarely do you see that lead evaporate in SEC play.
I think the other thing too for me, Rylan Galvan defensively is going to be big. And also, the fact that Texas has 2 left-handed starters, you've got a chance to control the running game. Kentucky leads the SEC in steals. They got 70 stolen bases so far this year. So, but I like the fact that you got your top 2 guys in rotation are left-handed guys, and as many left-handed arms as Texas has. If you can just avoid, giving up free passes, you've got a chance to shut down their running game, which is a really big part of how Kentucky does damage.
And CJ, to your point, talking about their team ERA, Ben Cleaver, their Sunday starter, the sophomore, actually leads the SEC in ERA and opposing batting average. He's also top 10 in batters struck out and top 10 in batters struck out looking. So, yes, they do have a talented pitching staff. And a lot of people forget, you look at the polls those first few weeks of the season, Kentucky was right there in them. And they have played, Jeff, we talked about it this morning on Coffee and Football. They have played a lot of talented teams very close, very, very close. So it's going to be a test this weekend. Will it be a Georgia or Arkansas test? Probably not. But we have said it week in and week out right here on Bases Loaded that every week is a tough week, regardless of the opponent when it comes to conference play.
100%, yeah. This is a Kentucky program that's been pretty solid in recent years. So, it's not going to be, like I said, no road series in this league is easy. But, it should be a pretty good one this weekend in Lexington.
That's right. And we will end today's episode with some possible good news, fellas. Was told that Adrian Rodriguez most likely to return this weekend. Of course, Texas could use that as always. And I've had a lot of people ask about Max Ballou as well. Not going to see him this weekend, but from what I'm told, the staff remains cautiously optimistic that he will return sooner rather than later. So a quick recovery for Ballou would be awesome for this team, no doubt about it.
Good news on that is Max Ballou's listed as out on the official SEC injury report. Adrian Rodriguez not on the injury report. So that should be a little bit of good news. CJ, I'm kind of with you, though. I wish that, Rodriguez coming back is great. Don't get me wrong. But I wish you could still find a way to get Jaquay Stewart some at-bats, because I really felt like as that Georgia series went on, felt like he was kind of starting to figure it out a little bit. So you like to get him some ABs. It may be tough. And, at this point, it's like, who do you take out of the lineup? Because, with Rodriguez working his way back, Borba's still going to be at third base. And honestly, Tommy Farmer, you definitely don't want to take Tommy Farmer out of the lineup right now, because he started to get it figured out. So it's becoming a really good problem to have. But one of the biggest question marks Schloss had with his team coming into the year was depth. But I think now, with Jaquay Stewart, and now you're bringing Easton Winfield off the bench, Rodriguez coming back. You've got Tommy Farmer with Max Ballou out. He's been able to get some things figured out. So you've been able to manufacture. We've seen some good things from Cole Chamberlain here and there. Like, you've been able to manufacture some depth as the season's going on. And trust me, if you're going to win a conference championship, or you're going to win that conference tournament in Hoover, you're going to need a Tommy Farmer, a Jaquay Stewart. You're going to need those guys to come through with big defensive plays or big ABs for you. So I like the fact, guys, that Schloss has found some depth through this point in the season.
Yeah, 100% agree.
All right, y'all. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Bases Loaded right here on OTF. Hope you all have a phenomenal weekend, and we will be back next Friday for some more baseball talk. So for CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe, I'm Blake Munroe, and we'll see you then.